Now, the first thing I want to point out to you is I have given you the practice project. We're going to walk through it today, but there's also a video here for you to be able to take a look at that as well. First thing I did right off the bat is you'll notice that I named it 2.2 instead of 3.2. And that was a mistake because I had this done before for another class and it was 2.2 there. So just ignore that and move on with your life. But what we're going to show you today, or what I'm going to walk through with you today, is exactly what's already in the video there, okay? Now, I've also turned on closed captioning for that, and you can turn it into high def, right? So you can get it up to 1080p on that, and you should be able to see what we're doing there. So with that in mind, let's come over here and take a look at the Gantt chart that we're looking at here, all right? So we're going to come and we're going to go to Assignments, Practice Project 3.2 on the Gantt chart. Now, a Gantt chart, while you're pulling that up, was developed by a gentleman named Henry Gantt, right? Samuel, what are you talking about? Can I take part in them virtually? The cooking classes? Because I don't know the answer to that. All right. So, and by the way, if you don't know how to cook, you can go onto the Food Network and you can download lessons on there as well. So now you've got it on video and you're good, right? Okay. All right. So let's come over here. We're going to take a look at Project 3.2 on the Gantt chart. Right. As soon as it downloads. Takes a little bit. Okay. Now. All right. So let's open that up, take a look. All right. And here's what it looks like. All right. So I'm going to make that a little bit larger where you can see that. Okay. And where we got each of these pieces here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up the other Excel doc that we already finished. That was Practice Project 3.1, this guy. Okay. Now, what I've done here is I went through and I added a couple of things. First thing is I added a start and a stop node. The start and stop node is not part of the actual project. It's simply where you start and where you stop, and you'll notice that it is not connected, therefore it's not part of the workflow, okay? In addition to that, I went through and I changed the ID numbers on each of them. So instead of A, B, C, D, E, it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, so on and so forth. All right. So don't let that trip you up as we move forward with this. But we're going to go ahead and take this and we're going to move it into our Gantt chart. Okay. So with that in mind, let's pull this up and we'll take a look at each one of the pieces. All right. So the Gantt chart is a way for us to put a linear progression and help us to understand how long each of these pieces are going to take. And then we'll end up with a waterfall chart at the bottom, which I'll show you in just a moment. Okay, so you'll notice that on the Gantt chart, we have a common start and stop node. That's number 10 and number 100 right here. So far, so good. And I've also put in each of the task names or descriptions for you already. That was just to simply expedite time. Normally, you would do that on your own, okay? So ID number 20, defining requirements. ID number 30, assigning the team. 40 is designing hardware, so on and so forth, okay? Now, with each of these, I don't have this correct, so you're going to have to help me understand what each piece of it is, right? So the very first thing I know is that before I can define my requirements, I have to start the project. So for defining the requirements, the predecessor ID is going to be 10, 10. So we're going to put in 10 here, okay? For assigning the team, the predecessor is defining requirements. So for assigning team, we're going to put in 20. For designing the hardware, again, designing the hardware here means that we have to define the requirements first. And so that's going to be predecessor number 20 for that one as well. All right. We take a look at coding the software. So what is the ID number that is the predecessor for coding software? It's assigning the team, right? So we're going to put in number 30 here. Okay. For building and testing hardware, we've got number 60 that goes there. Okay, so for number 60, the predecessor is designing hardware ID number 40. And so we put that in to our predecessor chart as well. Developing the patent request. We go all the way back and find that the predecessor for that one is number 20. So we put in a 20 right there.
Why isn't it 10?
Because we've already done 10. And the predecessor for developing the patent request is defining the requirement.
Oh,
So you're not going to go all the way back. You're going to go all the way back to defining the requirement. You have to define requirements before you can develop the patent request.
Okay, so that's yellow.
Yes. You stick with the yellow parts, right? Now, I've color coded them according to my legend. Whatever software you're using will have their own, okay? Testing the software. What's the predecessor for testing software? See this one? What's the predecessor? The one that comes before it, what is that for testing software? Number 50, good job, okay? And then finally, for integrating the system, this is a merge activity. So you're gonna have 3 separate ID numbers, okay? You see that there's an arrow going to testing software, building hardware, and developing the patent request. That is 80, 70, 60, or if we put them in order, it's 60, 70, 80. We'll put those in here, 60, tab over, 70, 80, 60, 70, 80. And then finally, the finish node is just going to have number 90 for a predecessor. All right, so we put in number 90. Okay. I'm going to stop right there, and we're going to slow down and make sure that everybody has those in. So I will stop right here. I'll go ahead and save my Excel sheet, and I'll let everybody get caught up. Okay. So far, so good? Okay. So if I'm going to assume, if I don't see you raise your hand or your mic come on, that everybody's got this. If you don't got it, let me know and I'll go back over whatever you missed. But I think this part is actually fairly straightforward. Yes.
So I didn't understand why we are using 10, 20, 20, 30 instead of the letters.
So we changed that only because when I should have had it 10, 20, 30 when we did this. That's what we should have done. But I left it as the letters so that it didn't get confusing.
Okay, but what's of these numbers? Nothing, just to identify, right?
That's correct. Okay, on the bottom, the numbers in yellow are just identifier numbers. They have no significance other than that.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. All right. Okay, so let's move forward, right?
Hey, Jay,
now,
sorry.
Yes.
So for like define requirements where the ID number is 10, where did you find that in the boxes, or was that already predetermined?
So we know defining the requirements is the first thing we do down here at the bottom, right?
Yep.
That has a start node of number 10.
Okay.
Now, generally, we have a common start and stop node, which is why it's indicated both in blue and as a hexagon rather than a square.
Okay.
In flowchart parlance, a hexagon indicates that it's start and stop. We just know that intuitively. Okay. Or it's a better way to say it is it's not part of the network diagram. It's like we're thinking as a coding for a computer, And so we're saying we're going to start here, we're going to stop there, and in between is what we're actually going to do.
Okay.
To put it another way, remember that a task is any element that requires time. Starting and stopping do not require time.
Okay.
But we still give them an identifier number so that it fits into our flow chart, or into our Gantt chart rather. You got me? Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Now let's talk about this OMP thing that we have up here, right? This is the optimistic number. This is the minimum time we required if we thought we could absolutely just sail right through things. Nothing's going to go wrong. Everything's going to go right. We get a green light the whole way. That's the optimistic number. The pessimistic number is probably where we are right now, right? This is what's called an SHTF scenario. And if you don't know what SHTF is, you can go ahead and look that up on Urban Dictionary, right? And you can figure that one out for yourself, right? And then in between is the most likely scenario, okay? Now, the way you put this in is you take the most likely time, and that becomes your duration time. So the duration becomes your most likely time, okay? So with that in mind, the duration for the defining the requirements is a 10. That's going to take us 10 days. The duration for assigning the team, we identified as 5. Here's where I'm getting that number down here in the orange, right? That's the duration, okay? So that's going to be 5 days. Designing the hardware is going to take 25 days. Coding software is going to take 20 days. Building and testing hardware, 50 days. Developing the patent request, 15 days. Testing the software, 35 days. And integrating the system, 15 days. And finally, finishing takes 0 days, right? So the start and the stop takes 0 days. I'll slow down right there and let you get caught up for a minute. And while everybody else is getting caught up, did we finally figure out what SHTF means? Nobody? Mm-hmm. Kind of like where we are right now, right? So I saw a meme on Facebook. It's like, we're all Floridians here, right? So we don't really understand it unless you tell us what category it is. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what category of hurricane would you say we're in right now? A 10? No, I said on a scale of 1 to 5. And this is not a 10. You have electricity, right? You think this is a 5? Is it that bad, really? Might be for some, right? Okay. Okay. For Tom, it's a tropical storm, but that's because he has plenty of beer, right? How would you be able to connect if you didn't have electricity, Cole? How would we be having this conversation? No, sir. Doesn't work that way. Okay. Right. I also know how many rolls of toilet paper you have. Now you're scared, right? So, speaking of toilet paper, you know, they're supposed to be giving us they're supposed to be giving us this stimulus check or whatever. If they could just send me a case of toilet paper, I think I'd be okay. Be all right. Right? So, all right. So now that we have BS'd enough, right? Right? Case of toilet paper, case of paper towels will be good to go. You know what you can do, though, is you can actually use rags. Right? Did they refund it or you want them to refund it? Hold up. Let's back up. Tiana, did they refund the money or you want it refunded? So they gave you a partial refund. That's good. 30% is not too bad. I mean, at least they gave you something back, right? So that's the least they could do. Was that just a recent development? Because I didn't hear about that this morning. Right? Okay, so that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. It is very, very happy to hear that. So at least they're trying, right? So Why would a nonprofit try to keep your money to make a profit? Right? I don't know. All right. So let's move forward, right? Okay. Okay. So let's move forward, because if we start addressing that, we'll be here all day. All right. So the next thing we need to do is we need to look at the optimistic, most likely pessimistic thing. So how do you know what you should look at? We know that these were done by what the normal everyday average would be, okay? But what we're going to assume is that this process fits a normal curve, okay? And so we're going to take 2 days off for the optimistic, and we're going to add 2 days for the pessimistic, okay? Yes, the latest day that you think you could do it would be the pessimistic. But the way we're going to do it is we're just going to add, we're going to take 2 days off, saying we're able to get it done 2 days early, or it's going to take us 2 days later for the pessimistic. Now, where I'm getting that is this idea, right? So this expected time is from the duration. It uses 2 different distributions. The one is called a beta distribution, the other is called a triangular distribution. The beta distribution takes the optimistic plus 4 times the most likely plus the pessimistic, and then divides by 6. So it increases the most likely and gives it more weight. The triangular distribution just looks at all 3 of them equally and says O plus M plus P divided by 3. So the one that this particular software is using is actually the triangular distribution, okay? We're just going to weight them all equally, and we're going to give it equal prudence, all right? So in order to do that, we're just going to take each of these numbers, and we're going to take we're going to take the most likely, okay, minus 2. We're going to take 2 days off. All right, so most likely minus 2. So that means then optimistically we can get it done in 8 days rather than 10. We then autofill, right? And we have these numbers, okay? For pessimistic, we're going to add 2 days. So we're just going to say 10 plus 2. Yes, it does, and we'll go over that in just a minute, okay? And then we autofill all the way down, okay? So far, so good? All right. Now, before we go any further, let's take a look at all of these things in relation to the network diagram below, and then we're going to take a look at that Gantt chart that you saw, the graph underneath, okay? So, where did we get all of these numbers? This number is the ID number. That's in yellow at the bottom, okay? This number in orange came from the orange number at the bottom. The most likely number came from the orange numbers at the bottom, right? My early start number is here. That's in that green shaded stuff. And so that comes from here. So each of the early start numbers is similar to the green that you have down here, right? The early finish number is early start plus duration, right? So the early finish is early start plus duration, just like we have here. The late start is here, late start, and then late start plus duration gives us the late finish. And then of course you have your slack number. So every number you have represented here is also represented here in the same way.
My XO
Now
didn't
that, go ahead.
My XO didn't calculate that.
What do you mean? You mean this?
The ES, yeah, my ES numbers are different than yours.
Okay. So I don't know what's up with that. Do you have these numbers correct?
Yeah,
And did you put in 8, 3, whatever, or did you add them together like I did?
I did like you did.
Okay, so what I would suggest, let's keep going forward. What I would suggest to get it right is to go back and watch the video that I have, okay?
It's something
And
I'm
we're gonna
with.
be able to put that together into a cohesive whole so that you can see how we do that. And if you still are struggling with it, let me know and you and I will work on it one-on-one.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So now that we have the numbers in there, what we ended up creating is a Gantt chart, right? And a Gantt chart, or a waterfall chart as it's also known, is a way for us to visually see how long each piece is going to take, right? So we have that Gantt chart down here, okay? And we have at the top the total days to completion. We knew that it was going to take 100 days because we had already calculated that. But what we had not taken into account was the fact that we were going to have to take weekends and holidays off. Now, before we get into that, let's take a look. It tells you that the critical path or the critical assignment is in red. And we already know that the critical assignment was define requirements, design hardware, build and test, and integrate the system, right? When you look at the blue ones, that tells you that there is flexibility built into each point, right? So it tells you here how much flexibility you have. It tells you that assigning the team is going to take 5 days. And if you hover over the gray part, it tells you that you have 15 days of slack in assigning the team. So far, so good? Okay. So the gray area has 15 days of slack. When you look at coding the software, we see that we have 15 days of slack here. Developing the patent requirement, we knew had 60 days of slack, so on and so forth. So in this one chart, you can see the critical path in red. You can see the flexible tasks in blue, and you can see how much flexibility you have or your slack in gray. All right. Now, what that allows you to do is play around with it. If we needed to say, get this done fairly quickly, we can come here to today's date, which is 3/26. We put that in, and it tells me that based on the parameters we have right now, we cannot finish this project until August. That is 100 days. Now, if you were to take each of those days, if I were to take this minus that, we're going to find that it's actually 140 days. The reason why there's a discrepancy between this and that is that this is the total number of days from today till the end of the project. This is the total number of days we're actually going to work on the project. In other words, we're going to take 40 days off for weekends and holidays, right? So that's where that number is coming from. All right. Now, lest you think, well, it's not important for the weekends and the holidays, Congress is holding up $2 trillion worth of aid. 1/10 of our GDP is being held up right now to make sure that workers are taken care of, as well as the companies, right? So we need to make sure that we take those days off. We need to make sure that people are taken care of. But when we're doing project management, we also know that certain things have to change and certain priorities have to take advantage, right? So now, with that in mind, what do you think would happen if we came in here and said, well, I think we're going to be more pessimistic than normal. And so instead of adding 2 days here, I'm going to come here and I'm going to add 6 days, right? And then I'm going to autofill all the way down. What happens, as you can see, is your entire project changes. And if you become more pessimistic, you think, okay, we're going to add 6 days. As Tom says, you get less slack on each of the nodes. And as a result of getting less slack, it takes you longer to complete. It's going to take over 105 days to complete this now. And now it's going to be 820 before we can get it done. You see that? Okay.
Hey, Joe. Why
Yes.
is it that when you become more like pessimistic and that slack lowers, that the overall days of completion increases?
So let's think about what we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Before, we looked at this and we said, we can look at our class as a project. We had the time, we had the cost, and we had the technical requirements, right? So the time is we had 15 weeks to complete things. The technical requirement was we had to take each of these exams and each of these projects and make it happen. The cost for you was not only going to be monetary, but it was also going to be opportunity cost, lack of sleep. You don't get to party as much. You don't get to go out. You don't get to do those things. Okay? We have, because of the COVID-19 virus, if we look at our class as a project, we have taken that entirety of that and we have now become more pessimistic. Instead of, okay, defining the requirements, instead of it taking 10 days, we're now saying it's going to take 15 days. And because of that, it means that we're going to have to push things back. We're not saying that it's actually going to take that. We're just simply accounting for it. And if we have to account for it, then we have less slack. And if we have less slack, it means we're going to take longer to do the exam. Did I answer your question or did I dance around it? Because I
No,
have
that
a
makes
tendency
sense.
to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay. So now that we're at this point, right, let me stop for just a moment. I'll go ahead and save that, make sure that we're all on the same page. You'll also see that it has that common start and stop node that I was telling you about, where you have endpoints here and here, right? Okay. Now, the idea behind that is it tells you how many weeks it's going to take. What you're going to have to do for your particular assignment, for your project, so let's come over and take a look at that, right? So if we look at project 3 for your Gantt chart and your network diagram, you're going to take your project, you're going to write out that network diagram for me, and you're going to do that Gantt chart. All you have to do to make that happen is come in here and put your project together that looks something like this, okay? You can copy and paste each of these modules in there, or you can just come in and if yours has exactly 8 like this one does, you can just change the names. You can develop it any way you want, and if you're struggling with it, you let me know and I will help you out, okay? If you have access to a PC, there's a Microsoft project that you can use where you just plug these numbers in. If you have an iPad or a Mac, you're probably going to have to do this by hand. No matter, for this one, you simply have to put the numbers in, put the predecessors in, and all of this will take care of itself. If you have to add more to it, you just right-click, insert, and it'll shift the cells down and you can add it right in there. If you have to take one away, you right-click, delete, and it will take it away, okay? Now keep in mind, if you do that, you can see that everything underneath it is going to change as well. So you'll have to adjust accordingly. What I would suggest you do is fill out all of these and then just cut the ones at the bottom off. It'll make it much, much easier. All right? Now, I want you to understand that in this particular method, I am much less interested in the mechanics of it and much more interested in that network diagram and your 1 to 2 pages of telling me how long this project's going to take you.
Pages or paragraphs?
What did I say in the thing? Did I just say pages?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking for 1 to 2 paragraphs. I'm sorry that I said pages.
And would
So
you recommend to do this on a computer instead of the iPad if we have access to one?
Yes. Do you have a PC or a Mac?
Mac.
So if you have a Mac, go to openproject.org. Openproject.org. Okay? And at openproject.org, you're going to find this piece of software that you can use. that will allow you to put all of that information in there. You can put in your stuff here, you can put all of this in, and it will help you to develop that software. So if I put in here, right, okay, it's going to want you to give them your demographic information and all of that. But you can open a, just sign in with Google. That way you don't have to give them all of your information, right? I've already done this, so we're going to be good. You can do this right in the cloud. As a matter of fact, it might be better if all of us just do it in Open Project and make our lives much, much easier, right? Okay. I will skip that for now. Okay. So we just click plus project. And we'll call it whatever your name of your project is. So we'll just call it practice project. All right. Click create. And there are no work packages that do display. So we're going to create a task. Right. And then we have each of our tasks. So you can put each of those in there as you are moving forward. Right. So let's say, for instance, we wanted to put this one in. Right. Okay. All right, and so my new task here would be to define the requirements. All right. Okay. And are there any people assigned to it, so on and so forth? We don't know where we are with that. Forget all this other stuff. And you can see over here that it has created it for us. Now we can also come here and we can change the task name or number. Right, that's a new one. All right. Okay. And create a new task. The next one is assign team. Enter. Right, create a new one, and you'll notice that it gives you an automatic ID number here. Okay. All right. Now, as we're using this, I want to point out to you that you have a 14-day window from the time you sign in to the time you actually get this done. You can do this on any device, right? But once you get started with it, you have to stop. You have to continue. So you need to have it planned out before you get started with it, right? So then we're going to design hardware. We're going to then code. All right. Code.
Are you allowed giving us extra credit if we submit it early or not for this project?
No, not for this one, because I don't have any way to keep up with that other than on Canvas, and I just need to get it done, right? I will, however, give you extra time on the back end if you need it, okay? All right, and we can come to the next one.
You also set it back if we made errors as well.
That's right. Okay, which I don't think you will. I think this one's actually pretty straightforward, right? And then the last one is, what was the last one? Integrate, right? Okay, all right. All right, so now that we have each of those in there, we can come down and we can put the estimated time right here. This is where you'll put your duration, okay? So the estimated time is where you'll put the duration. So for defining the requirements, we said that was 10 days, right? Okay, 10 days, not hours, okay? All right, and we can just move from there. You can change that here by what your pieces are. Now this is one option, okay, open project. It's a little bit more, in my opinion, a little bit more difficult to just using that Excel spreadsheet that I gave you, all right? Because now it wants you to assign each piece of it and whatever. But you can come down here and you can see that it gives you the same Gantt chart, right? Now, if you were to do this and you say, okay, we're going to put each one of these dates in here, it will create the Gantt chart for you too. So if we said today was the day we were going to start this, right? Okay, we can come down and it takes us back over here to actually getting started with it. So this is a little bit clunkier. You can figure it out, but it is a little clunkier than just using the network diagram and the Gantt chart that I gave you, okay? All right. So do we have any other questions, comments, or concerns here?
You recommend Excel chart or open projects?
It depends on what you want to do. You can do either one, but if it were me, I would keep it simple and I would just plug it into the Excel chart that you have here. You and I went through your project the other day and you only had 9 different things that you had to do, right? You can probably combine 1 or 2 of them together and you'll be fine with that. You have room for 10 of them on here, okay? So
Joe,
you can do it that way.
with the Gantt chart, is it are we each submitting an individual Gantt chart or is it one per project like with the project charter?
It'll be one for project like the project charter.
Perfect, thank you.
And that is if you choose to continue working in a group. If not, we'll have to reevaluate. Okay? All right. Any other questions?
Does it need to be an APA format with the cover page or no?
You do need a cover page, but it doesn't have to be APA.
So cover page, one to 2 paragraph write-up. What are we putting in the write-up?
Whatever you need to tell me the story. So for instance, you can put like this. I saved this as a picture, which is how I got this down here. That would be one thing you'd put in the back. Save this as a picture, put that in the back, right? And then you can simply tell me, based on our understanding of the project, if we were doing this one, I would say, based on our understanding of the project and the accompanying Gantt chart and network diagram, we estimate that this project is going to take us approximately 100 days to complete.
Okay.
Right?
And
In addition,
in my project 1, you want us to submit to Excel as well with our assignment.
yes. And then you say, in addition to that, each of the projects are laid out in figures 1 and 2, right? And we can see that the critical path is defining the requirements, designing hardware, building and testing hardware, integrating the systems, period. That's paragraph 1, right? Paragraph 2, this is based upon the most likely scenario, and we have optimistic and pessimistic numbers built in, period. However, in light of recent circumstances, and then you can throw something in there about how you're all over the place and everybody's taking a little bit longer, it may take us longer to do certain pieces. So for instance, Cole, in your project, if everybody's doing their own thing, the hardest part is figuring out how you're going to get everything together in one package, right? So Google Docs would work, OneDrive would work, any of those would work.
Yep, and where on Canvas are the class lectures that you've been recording?
They're under the modules, okay? So we come over here, take a look, and you go to the modules, right? So it depends on where it is. So the last time we talked about, like when we did planning, we did the quiz 2 study guide and the quiz, the project management class for March 17th is right here because those 2 go together. Does that make sense? But for this particular piece, when we looked at the assignments, okay, so when we did the network diagram, I put 2 different pieces together on that, didn't I? Where was that other class? Somewhere in here. Can't remember where it was. I'll make sure it's where it goes, though, before I leave. Gantt chart. Yeah, there it is. So there's the video that I did for that. The classes that I have been recording, rather than me trying to tell you where they are, if you want, I can put them all in one thing. Would y'all rather me just say, okay, here's a module that says class recordings and then put them according to the date? Would that work better rather than trying to figure out each piece that they go?
Yeah.
Nicole says yes, he would rather that. What would the rest of you like to do? Okay, so then I will do that. And I will index them by the date, right? And I will probably put them in Studio with a link. Got it? So All right. So 2 people gave me a yes and the rest don't care.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other comments that we need? Do y'all need to know anything else about what we've worked on today? Okay. All right. So if you do not, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and then I'm going to allow